Dear guests and attendees, our second session is about to begin. Please take your seats. I kindly invite the chair and the attendees to the podium to make their presentations. Tamam. Tamam. Tamam. Oturumumuz başlamak üzeredir. Lütfen yerlerimizi alalım. Müzecilikte İletişim adlı oturumumuzun oturum başkanı Profesör Doktor Murat Gül, Alberto Garlandini İKOM Vakfı Başkanı, Ivan Plum Kültürel Miras Akademisi Müdürü, Francesco Trentini Villa Pisani Müdürü, Elena Aluadi Avrupa Kraliyet Konutları Birliği Genel Koordinatörü. Our second session, Network and Communications in Museums, Chair Professor Murat Gül, from member of the Scientific Board, Directorate of National Palaces, Alberto Garlandini, President of the ICOM Foundation, Yvonne Plum, Director of the Heritage Academy, Dr. Francesco Trentini, Director of Villa Pisani, and Elena Aluadi, General Coordination of the Network of European Residences.
I think I can start. Good afternoon. I would like to welcome you for the second session in the afternoon on behalf of the organizing committee. My name is Murat Gül. I am an architectural historian at Istanbul Technical University and also a board member of the National Palaces Scientific Committee. We are running 25 minutes late, so I just want to be brief and I allow the speakers to use their time freely. And I also would like to have time for question and answers after the sessions, after the speakers. Our topic this afternoon is network and communications in museums, two important concepts or term, especially under the current political climate in the worldwide. I understand that communications and networks have two folds. The first one is within the third parties and general public, that communication and networking is very important for the institutions we have to deal with and the general public, but also the communications and networking for the communications and networking are two also important between the museums and organizations. And we have 4 distinguished speakers. I just want to introduce their name, but I skip for their resume. They have very extensive resumes, then I don't want to take your time, all written in the book. We have Alberto Garlandini from as the president of ICOM Foundation Italy, and Yvonne Plom, director of Heritage Academy from the Netherlands. Francesco Trentini, director of Villa Pisani, Italy, and also the last speaker will be from France, Elena Aluadi. If I pronounce your surname correctly, forgive me if I make a mistake. And as the first speaker, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Garlandini, and his title of the presentation is New Approaches for the Museums of the Future. Please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. My speech, dear friends and colleagues, is about the museum of the future that we, museologists, we cultural people strive for.
Does it go forward? Maybe.
Good. Dear friends, museums are now facing unprecedented challenges and opportunity. Responding to the pressing requests of communities, museums have taken on new social responsibilities. Museums has always been places for the preservation of memory and heritage, as well as institutes for the production and dissemination of knowledge. In addition, today they now deal with many contemporary issues. I will focus my speech on some pressing challenges that museums are coping with in a changing world. Technological revolution, sustainability and climate crisis, increasing conflicts and disasters, community access to culture. Let's start with a few words about the technological revolution. When envisaging the museum of the future, we must inevitably address the impact of the technological revolution. It's not just a question of innovating communication. The digital world questions how knowledge is produced and disseminated. Digital technologies are making museums more accessible and engaging. However, they pose serious challenges for epistemological institutions such as museums, whose traditional approaches to knowledge were informed by assumptions made in the 19th century. The digital transition challenges the idea that knowledge and culture are produced only in a hierarchical, unidirectional, vertical mode. We are well aware now that there is an unlimited number of sources of knowledge, and new technologies have empowered people to participate in online debates, to produce pluralistic narratives, to generate new collective contents, and overall, to exchange knowledge freely and easily, more freely and more easily than in the past time. And this is particularly relevant for the younger generation who are digital natives. This paradigm shift is so important for museums that knowledge exchange is one of the key words introduced in the new 2022 ICOM definition of museums. The spread of generative artificial intelligence offers new opportunities, but poses issues that should not be underestimated. The so-called hallucinations, the frequent lack of veracity of the artificial intelligence platform, are due to outdated or erroneous data, reference data. And here, dear friends and colleagues, there is an ethical dimension. Museums are considered to be amongst the most credible institutions, and artificial intelligence must be used to strengthen the credibility of museums, not to thwart it. And professionals must ensure that the new applications used in and for museums are fed with reliable data. We cannot afford to lose museum credibility due to a lack of control over knowledge we produce and disseminate. And now a few words about a fear which is widespread but not really justified, at least for me. I'm talking about the fear that artificial intelligence could undermine or even replace museum profession. Personally, I'm not particularly worried about it. For decades, it has been said that technology will replace humans, but this is not the case. A terminal equipped with artificial intelligence will not replace human mediation, but will complement and improve it. If properly approached, artificial intelligence will be a tool to complete and improve the museum's mission. As it happened with internet and mobile phones, it will change our lives and professions. It will raise the quality of our work and allow us to be more creative and effective in our jobs. It will also eliminate obsolete tasks. But there is something that worries me. And what worries me is how cultural professionals can manage rapid technological innovation. Winning the challenge of digital transformation means preventing technology from dictated choices. Technology must serve the social mission of museums, not vice versa. Digital transition is not about technology per se. It is centered on people and how they manage to innovate roles and way of thinking and working. Museum professionals must update their competencies and rethink organizational structures and processes so that they are aligned not only with new digital platforms, but also with the new expectations of visitors. And now a few words on museum sustainability and the challenge of climate crisis. We are living in a time when threats to cultural heritage are increasing at an alarming time and rate. The number of disasters has almost doubled over the last 20 years. In 20 years, we had more than 7,000 major disasters that have affected over 4 billion people, causing the deaths of over 1 million people. Earthquakes, landslides, floods, tsunamis, hurricanes, drought have been exacerbated by climate change. Sustainable development requires a cultural approach. Culture and heritage play a pivotal role for the success of the United Nations Agenda 2030. Cultural rights, diversity, and creativity are core components of human and sustainable development. Achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and fighting for climate justice have become fundamental reference points for museums. Museums can play a key role in fostering awareness of risks and supporting environmental policies, mitigation and adaptation strategies, as well as sustainable practices in local communities. Digital transition is closely connected with ecological transition. Digitalization and generative artificial intelligence drive immense energy consumption. Global digital companies are planning to purchase small nuclear reactors to provide low-carbon solution for their electricity-demanding data centers. Museums must play their part. Museums must be extremely careful about their environmental impact, must promote recycle and reuse, must limit their CO2 emissions, use of paper, and waste of energy. In recent years, governments have expressed an increasing awareness that our common future is at stake. Heritage policies are needed to build global peace and prosperity. In June 2022, I had the honor to attend the Naples First Conference of the Ministers of Culture of the Euro-Mediterranean regions, including the Turkish minister. I spoke to the ministers highlighting the need for international cooperation to face the threats to cultural and natural heritage. The 2022 Euro-Mediterranean Conference resulted in the adoption of the Naples Declaration, which focused on culture as an asset for peace and sustainable development. However, I have to say that governments still have difficulties in moving from words to effective actions. But the world is suffering from an increasing number of armed conflicts, some closer to us that affect our lives more directly, and others that are far, that are not discussed or addressed enough. Specialized international institutes paint a frightening scenario. The Uppsala Conflict Data Program, a research program run by the Uppsala University in Sweden, reported 170 violent conflicts around the world in 2024. The International Institute for Strategic Studies indicates that the number of deaths due to armed conflicts worldwide increased by 37% between 2023 and 2024. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees estimates that the number of people forced to leave their homes due to conflict reached a staggering 123 million in 2024. What can museums do to promote dialogue and peace? Museums strive for promoting intercultural dialogue and peaceful relations, building bridges between people and cultures, and helping communities face past and present tragedies. Even in the most difficult situation, long-term personal and professional relationships should be preserved. Professionals should not be considered necessarily co-responsible for the policies of their governments. The conditions for mutual recognition, for a just and lasting peace are built before and during conflicts, not only after their end. And now I would like to say a few words about the fourth part of my speech on the social role of museums. I would like just to refer to the 2015 UNESCO recommendation on museum, which was the result of a successful collaboration with ICOM. The 2015 UNESCO recommendation on museum emphasized the social role of museums. It says member states are encouraged to support the social role of museums. Museums are increasingly viewed in all countries as playing a key role in society as a factor of cohesion. The new museum definition after the first part, in the second part says, include some remarkable keywords. Open to the public, accessible and inclusive museums foster diversity and sustainability. Museums operate and communicate ethically, professionally, and with the participation of communities. And concluding my speech, I would say that communities not only ask to be consulted, community expect active participation. Access to culture with no discrimination is a human right and a key indicator of social equity and well-being. Museums are strongly committed to guarantee access to collection and heritage. And to conclude, I would like to say that in an increasingly diversified and challenging world, museums need interdisciplinary approaches, updated competencies, innovation, teamwork, creativity, if they want to stay credible and relevant. Museums have become a melting pot of professions, disciplines, and competencies. Training and continuing education are a must. The speed of change requires soft skills, digital mindset, and the courageous hybridization of humanities with scientific discipline. And the last word, really, I would say that global challenges call for global, coordinated responses. Global cooperation is needed now more than ever. And today, International Symposium is an important step in the right direction. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Gallandini. It is very inspiring and very warning talk. You mentioned about some significant challenges we have to deal with, such as the wars, climate changes, and the use of technology, excessive technology. I just want to briefly mention about that technology part a little bit. As you may know, or as you are all very well aware, that heritage technologies or digital technologies, design computing in heritage management is supported in the current research environment, and it is a developing area. It has attracted lots of funds from different institutions such as EU funds, and we have to deal with how to manage this issue as we face the similar issues in education. Artificial intelligence in education is an issue. It cannot be deniable, but we need to find the ways to deal with. And today, this session's second speaker is Ms. Yvonne Polom, the Director of Heritage Academy in the Netherlands. Her speech topic is Integrated Conservation, How Museums Can Play a Meaningful Role on the Way to a Socially Sustainable Society, or How the Dutch Deal with Heritage. Thank you.
Oh, yes, wonderful. Thank you very much, Dr. Yildiz. Thank you very much for inviting me again to this important symposium. Dear colleagues, dear friends, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and to discuss a few things with you. Thank you, Alberto, for putting the focus on education and training. For me as director of the Heritage Academy, I can only support that, of course. Heritage Academy is a Dutch institute for heritage professionals. We train heritage professionals and support them from knowledge to skills. And actually, I must say, due to COVID, we are able to do this online as well and also work internationally. Yes, how the Dutch deal with heritage, but actually I have to say it's not only the Dutch do it like that, but we do it more and more in an integrated way. So I will talk a bit about that today. Our society is subject to major physical, socio-economic and governance transitions. Over the last few years, we have seen our surroundings change considerably. Also, our position as cultural authorities is no longer being taken for granted. Whereas historically, heritage was primarily a matter of the state to assess and govern, in the last decades or so, we see an increased focus on heritage as a societal and social concern with a growing role for market institutions. To cope with these changes is important for several reasons. One is that national governments are increasingly withdrawing as subsidy providers, even in a prosperous country as the Netherlands. Next, there's more pressure to collaborate both within and outside the sector. New themes are collection mobility, de-accession, reuse, and next to that, restitution and decolonization, and of course, all the challenges my colleague Alberto Gallandini already mentioned. Methods for valuation and selection of heritage and collections are changing and becoming more and more socially oriented. At the same time, a socialization of heritage has started. Not only an expert opinion now determines what heritage is, but the stories of those involved are also considered important. The most important reason, however, to link up to these changes is that this is the only way, I would say, for many heritage structures and museums to maintain relevant for the future. This view is internationally known under the name of integrated preservation. Integrated conservation focuses on developments that provide a permanent basis for historical objects and museums. And conversely, museums thus become a carrier of our development as a society and play a role in tackling societal challenges. For us as museum and heritage professionals, this means we have to go from stones to stories, from collection to connection, from object to environment, from protection to experience and use. Museums assume the role of platform that makes the participation of many possible for the benefit of many. Rather than providing a standard service to consumers, these platforms invite contributions from participants to take part and make it relevant for them. Of course, to a certain extent, museums do this already, but what is different is that this process should be opened up in varying degrees and embedded more closely in the everyday lives of citizens or society at large. This approach requires a lot from the museum professional. The traditional museum tasks such as conservation, management, presentation, and communication alone are no longer sufficient. Our new museum definition already focuses on more different things. The museological thinking will have to change from collection building and presentation, valuation and maintenance to a context-oriented and more dynamic view of museums, with museum professionals in a more facilitating role rather than an authoritative one. Museums as platforms means to be local, connected, collaborative, sustainable. I would like to discuss with you 3 out of 7 key concepts that can help us to investigate the possibilities of such a socially sustainable role for the museums. Commons, placemaking, and co-creation. The others are, you can see them on the screen, hopefully, connectedness, local, circularity, and proportionality. The 7 concepts are taken from the dictionary, A Sustainers Lexicon 2016, in which cultural researcher Michiel Schwartz describes the relationship between spatial design and heritage on the basis of these concepts. Together they describe a cultural shift, a new culture that is more connected, more local, and more ecologically and socially sustainable. Characteristic values include connectedness, closeness, sharing, and a human touch. Today we discuss commons, placemaking, and co-creation. To start with commons. Commons are what belongs to us all and what we look after communally. It's all that we share. Natural commons like oceans and rivers, or cultural commons as landed libraries, or most of what we call cultural heritage. The key word is a community. Today the term commons is a contemporary version of the old word, meaning what is commonly shared. The commons idea can be seen as mindset as much as a way of organizing resources, places, and heritage. The idea of commons can provide a conceptual frame for forging new forms of social engagement in process of museum making. Next key concept is placemaking. Placemaking is all about meaning. It shifts our focus to our relationships with the places we inhabit. It recasts what we understand by the term living environment. We can experience place and make it our own, and then abstract space becomes concrete place, filled with meaning. And isn't that what museums are about? The process of making meaning? It implies a community-centered process of design. In other words, it takes a place to create a community and a community to create a place. This is an active concept where the process is as important as the outcome. The process is concerned as much with our relationships with our surroundings as with place itself. In its core, it's about forms of engagement. The issue of designing appropriate forms of social engagement has therefore institutional dimensions. Co-creation, co-design. Many other speakers already mentioned this, co-creation. It is about connect and collaborate to generate power through people. In the concept of co-creation, citizens, visitors become actively involved in shaping their own living environment. They become co-designers. The idea of co-design is to be seen as part of a growing trend of community participation in the design of our cultural institutions. This implies that experts and non-experts are designing together with three attributes: collaborative, inclusive, and open. I would like to share with you three examples, not only Dutch, in which the principles of commons, placemaking, and co-creation have been applied, and through which these museums and institutions became closely or more closely connected with social players and better aligned with the value of local communities. I start with Impact Hub Birmingham. Impact Hub Birmingham is an open platform that has breathed new life into the ground floor of the Walker Building, an industrial monument in Birmingham's Digbeth district. Impact Hub is a civic innovation platform and an open workspace focused on creating democratic futures for the city. It consciously links to the making history of both the area and the 1912 building. It explicitly positions itself as a next-generation town hall or a commons to unlock what they call the power of us. This did not create a community of public, visitors or friends, but they created a new community of practice that explicitly challenges the self-perception and external image of Birmingham. We go to Haveli Old Delhi. The Haveli Dharampura Old Delhi is about a family who wanted to renovate their 19th century Indian mansion in the historical center of Old Delhi. From a renovation project, it turned out to an award UNESCO winning example, the Asia Pacific Award for Cultural Heritage Conservation, a winning example of a sustainably dealing with heritage with and through an entire community. The project is seen as an exemplary participatory approach to conservation, which with the redevelopment of everyday space can make a meaningful and sustainable contribution to a better living environment for residents and passers-by. It became a place. You can check it out. Last example is the Van Abbe Museum in the Netherlands. Initially driven by a big crisis, the Country Council wanted to cut €1 million on the museum's budget, euro. The Van Abbe Museum wanted to become relevant to the city of Eindhoven and its residents, rather than present itself as an introverted context denying white cube. The core of this transition was the movement towards a user-driven museum. Instead of focusing on a passive audience, they seek an active relationship with people who see themselves as co-initiators and clients of activities in the museum. Arts becomes an instrument. The transition not only changed the relationship of the museum with its public, but the museum also started to look at itself differently. The museum is there to use, but it's up to the user to determine how. They say no. That's what we call radical museology. What all of them have in common is that in time of fundamental uncertainty about our urban futures, they create a diverse and inclusive capacity for experimentation that we urgently need. Given the scale and the uncertainty we face, business as usual is increasingly incoherent. We need to use collaborative, action-led tools and propositional methods that enable people to engage with possible future, allow for experimentation and space to fail safely. These three examples but a transition to a more participatory, locally based and citizen-led way of designing our museums, institutions and living environments with the principles of commons, placemaking and co-creation takes, of course, on many forms. How many minutes?
5.
Oh, good. In the field of museums, we have been witnessing the rise of inclusive, collaborative and participative approaches, reflected in terms as participatory museum, eco-museum, community museum. Follow this line does not mean that we will acquire the professional skills of an heritage or museum professional. But it does imply that we have to rethink the relationship between professionals and the non-professionals, and that it has to become practice that we as professionals connect with relevant groups and communities in new ways, inclusive, collaborative and open. We are challenged to reassess and reinvent the role we play in museum making in a sustainable way. Finally, I would like to raise some questions, further discussion and research, not today, but maybe in the future. And you already saw the slide. My first slide was about this. This is my neighborhood museum, which I'm chairperson, but actually there's not so much to chair. There's more work to do. It's a very small neighborhood museum, the poorest workers' neighborhood in Amersfoort, where I live. And this is not about collection, this is about community and getting together. The questions I would like to raise for further research and discussion, because we need to think about this more and trial and error. What if places of cultural heritage are treated as commons, as communal places governed and shared by a local community? How can we reimagine museums and historical sites as commons? And if we frame museums in terms of placemaking, that leads us to a crucial question. Who are actually the placemakers? Who is in charge? Who has a voice and who has not? Going beyond the conventional experts in museum and cultural heritage, placemaking and heritage making open up the process to other actors and stakeholders. So, how to get started? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. A few tips to get started. Start with people and their needs. Collaborative. This is a team sport. You can't do this on your own as director or manager. And iterate and experiment. This is not a one-shot process. It's iterative and cyclical. It goes like this. And bias toward action. Of course, we should not stop talking, but we have to try to do things, trial and error, to move forward. And very important, this is also, like I said, a team sport about accepting colleagues' ideas and building on them. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Yvonne Plom. It was very interesting, especially that concept you developed in the Dutch, as a Dutch experiment. Integrated conservation is important. I think I agree that we need to go beyond the borders, classical borders of our practice, and deal with the other concepts such as circularity, which is a very popular concept in economics and other fields as well. And it probably, and I believe that it will increase our impact in our practice in heritage and museum management. And thank you, thanks, it was very inspiring. And the third speaker is Dr. Francesco Trentini, Director of Villa Pisani, Italy. His title of the presentation is Updating the Network, Shaping the Contemporaneity of the Venetian Villas as Clusters and Regional, National and Global Scale. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the organizers for the invitation. More than 3,000 historical suburban residences of architectural value, dating from 15th to 19th century, located on an area of around 12,000 square kilometers. Hundreds of millions of tourists per year, but an uncoordinated tourism offer, tens of internet sites dedicated, and the lack of a unique portal, a plurality of institutions and associations, each of which focused on a selection of places. The daily effort to overcome conservation criticities that seem not affordable. That is the actual condition of the Veneto villas as an artistic and cultural phenomenon of worldwide importance, which yet hasn't intercepted its contemporaneity. Everything started at the beginning of the 15th century, as we know. The politics of the Republic of Venice turned to west, and the conquer of the mainland became the new goal. The dominion expanded, incorporating Treviso, Padua, Vicenza, Verona, and the territories of the Veneto plain. It became necessary for the Venetian patriciate to have fortified buildings in the countryside in order to guard the new territories. But the very flowering of the Veneto villas happened a century later, when the Republic of Venice decided to plan the benefic and economic enhancement of the conquered territories. The function of the villa as local presidium upgraded into a supporting role for the new politics of the so-called Sancta Agricultura, the holy agriculture, in the service of the nation power. As well known as early as mid-15th century, the original agricultural functionality of suburban residences underwent a huge humanistic process of reinterpretation starting from Leon Battista Alberti. The villa as a place for entrepreneurial and elitarian life of chosen souls passed by the Tuscan author to the main interpreter of such architectural typology in Venetian context, Andrea Palladio. For Palladio, the villa was sort of an economic control center in support of the land investments of the patriciate, as from Venice or from the mainland cities, as well as a cultural center. Yet, the unsaid that remains on the other side of Palladio's speech is the fact that the villa, each villa on a different scale of course, was a working area capable of providing jobs to tens or even hundreds of people. Another significant and unsaid implication has to do with the network of people involved in the arts and knowledges which recognized the villas, some more than others, as fundamental clusters for the exchange of ideas and the internationalization of culture. The extraordinary fact is that all of these dynamics happened by means of a coexistence and interaction between patricians and workers, upper and lower classes, by means of a local and territorial network. Moreover, because of the relationship between the landlords, the moving of craftsmen, the links guaranteed by streets and channels, the Veneto villas, far from being conceived as isolated entities, were all part of sort of a nebula, a plural economic, architectural, and aesthetical body aimed at the shaping of the territory. With the end of the Republic and of the networks that made affordable the building and the conservation of the nebula of the Veneto villas, the maintenance of such outstanding, the nebula is here, and here is in detail. The maintenance of such outstanding architectures and luxury gardens became more and more demanding. Nevertheless, the surviving physical footstep and the structures that made possible the villa culture give a ground for shaping the present life of Veneto villas through the empowerment of some structural and historical characteristics of the villa system, features that, in our opinion, still are the true potential for the present and future strategies to be followed to give to such an astonishing cultural heritage a role in the contemporaneity. Under this perspective, the first network to be considered and updated is the local and regional one. The Veneto villas are displayed around the eastern part of the North Italian global city region, a territory in which the total number of individuals is of 4.6 million of units, with an average density of 350 units per square kilometer. A territory densely populated even outside Venice and the main cities of Verona, Vicenza, Padua, and Treviso. This means that nearly all the villas insist on surrounding communities. Because of these characteristics, the Veneto villas have the potentiality of being fundamental pillars for the structuring of the local communities and the regional society. That's because they fulfill the demanded condition for a museum to be effective in shaping society: proximity, memory, openness to interaction, and future. Features typical of the urban museum in the Villa Veneta system can be found properly on a regional scale, so to enable, even throughout the countryside, cultural and social dynamics normally reserved to the urban population. Thus, the Villa Nebula, which in the past supported the bonifics on the lands and the agricultural enterprises of the Republic, now seems apt to support the cultural bonific of a regional society marked by fragmentation and strong educational disparities. Starting from the consciousness of this panorama, in our opinion, the mission of the villas in contemporaneity is to help structuring society, starting from the local, to be effective even on tourists. In premise, by involving the resident population and providing them of an inclusive environment where they can find an offer creative and the possibility of a contribution to the life of the museum. All this in Villa Pisani, the museum I am attending at as a curator for the Regional Directorate of the National Museums of Veneto, Italian Ministry of Culture, is in the process of realization in the spirit of the Faro Convention on the value of cultural heritage for society. Villa Pisani is a 18th century complex laying in the Venetian countryside, 30 kilometers from Venice, consisting of the residential palace and a monumental garden designed by the architects Girolamo Frigimedica Roberti and Francesco Maria Preti. It belonged to the Venetian Pisani family until 1806, then it passed to Napoleon. From 1814 to 1876, it was one of the imperial residences of the Habsburg family, and finally it became a national monument of the Italian state. In Villa Pisani, the search of new strategies for the enhancing of the civic initiative towards the Veneto villas has been the theme of a workshop co-organized with the Regional Institute for the Veneto Villas on the occasion of the European Heritage Days 2025. Go in the same direction, the projects for the reactualization of gestures and experiences once connected with the management of the garden, such as the harvesting of the citrus fruits or the process of removing weeds that in last years have been developed with the help of the disabled guests of the National Association of Families of People with Intellectual and or Relational Disabilities. But Villa Pisani proposes itself as a laboratory for the development of technical and professional innovation. Around 10 years ago, the Veneto Institute for Cultural Heritage started to keep into the rooms of the villa its courses for artwork restoration by practicing an experimentation of sustainable restoration techniques on selected stone material into the historic park. The very cultural offer of temporary exhibitions focuses also on the priorities of a villa that aims at enhancing the near society by means of culture. Hence the investigation of the dramatic relationships between contemporary man and nature in Giorgio Cutini's photographs, or the exhibition of a craftsmanship that became absolute beauty in Roberto Capucci's creations. Last but not least, one of the priority of the last year in constant dialogue with the local governments and the civil society has been the request of cycle paths and infrastructures that could support the convergence of the local networks towards the villa. Under this perspective, the discovery of the potentiality of Villa Pisani, but the same could be said of most of the Veneto villas, in supporting locally led development, professional innovation, regional sustainable mobility, and a greener culture, could allow the whole system of the Veneto villa to the access to the European Regional Development Fund. I'm concluding. The villa as a cluster within an international network. Many visits of international guests in the history took place in Veneto villas, Charles V, Voltaire, Mozart, and many others. But I will not discuss them for reasons of time. Yet, opening to a global perspective, it's worth to remember the emblematic case of Villa Varmarana in Mira, which was elected as a political laboratory in mid-18th century. In fact, there happened the sign of the 23 chapters of the 1765 treatise between the Republic and the Bey of Tripoli for the control of the piracy. A magnificent hospitality was offered by the Savio alla Mercanzia, one of the five wise men on trade of the Republic of Venice, Prospero Valmarana, to the minister of the Bey, Aga Abderrahman Kaji, and a luxurious dinner had place on the 9th July 1764 in the west guest quarters of the villa. Of course, not all the 3,000 villas were at the same level within such international network, but many of them were, despite not being residences of ruling families, thus giving evidence to the attitude of the territories of the Veneto villas as being cultural and political crossroad on a European and an international scale. Because of its geographical location and its oligarchic republican structure, the state of Venice managed in shaping its European and Mediterranean relationships also by means of the villas. The story of internationality, which at present hardly survives in specialistic essays and in the anecdotal accounts of few touristic guides, is now to be enhanced as the memorial and cultural ground for the structuring of new contemporary international networks. Following this strategy, in Villa Pisani of Stra, we have launched the project Travels, the Villa's international face, on the footstep of the past to put the villa into an international contemporaneity. The Italy-Turkey project for an exhibition dedicated to contemporary Turkish photography. The project about Goethe's Italian journey and his memories about the villas on the Brenta Channel, where Villa Pisani lays. And the project's Art in Transition, the move of artistic objects as trade union between European and international cultural institutions. The project with Josef Haydn Privathochschule in Eisenstadt for the study of the enhancement of the 1820 Viennese piano built by the Kremer family and still in the villa. The project for the study of the Korean Cheggori in the Pisani collection in collaboration with Ca' Foscari and the University of Leiden. In conclusion, there is a shift of paradigm to be actuated in order to shape the contemporaneity of the Veneto villas, overcoming the fragmentation between private owners and the regional or national museums. It is mandatory to recognize that the very object of preservation and valorization is the nebula for the Venetian villas, with its strong social and cultural implication. Interinstitutional joint action, public-private partnerships, the structural economic support by international agencies, these are the pillars of this shift, of this new methodology. This will be, what you see in this slide, could be the effect of the upgrading of the villas network. At present, we are in a transitional phase. A stronger effort is still to be done to achieve the expected results, and we need to share ideas and best practices. And let me say that today's symposium is a great opportunity for us for doing that, and I'm honored to be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tarantini. It was very interesting to listen to your presentation, and especially they were constructed for noble families, small palazios, actually villas, but they look like palaces. Can be utilized by organizing an efficient networking to help with the community identity and community in the current day understanding of life. This is very interesting, and I would like to read more about your research. And today our last speaker, the fourth speaker, is Elena Allouaoudi, General Coordinator of the Network of European Royal Residences from France. And her topic, or her title, is Network of European Royal Residences, the Case of the Mobility of Grants Program. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for the kind invitation. I'm very happy to be here again. I'm the last one, so I know it's difficult for everyone, but I promise I will be not so long, And finally, I'm quite happy to be the last one because I noticed we went through very important topics until now, like global cooperation, of course, cultural diplomacy, building bridges. And my presentation has the aim to give you a very concrete and practical example of how this could be done. So I would like to show you my slide.
Do we need technical assistance?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. So the idea was to show you how, through this very practical case, how this collaboration between institution and between professionals can be improved. So I'm very happy to present you the network of European royal residences. The network has been found already in 2001 with the aim precisely to sharing the best practices in managing of palaces museum. The headquarters of the palace of the network are based at the Palace of Versailles, but we are spread in all Europe. So you will see some figures here. In 2025, we count more than 100 palaces gathered in 36 institutions, 13 countries, and together these palaces, they reach this was the last year data, but 46 million of visitors. So it becomes something very big. And here you have a very short presentation of all our members. I'm sure you know most of them. I'm very happy here to see a lot of members of the network. We already had this morning the Prasson Foundation, Fontainebleau, Warsaw, of course, the Buddha Palace, and we are happy to have in this next few days Patrimonio National, Versailles, of course, Historic Royal Palaces, Schönbrunn, Rundale, and Pitti. So here you see all the members of the network. A lot of Italian members, of course. It's not my fault, I always say that. And so just to come back to the origin of the network, which is something very coherent here because we are speaking of Palaces Museum. Actually, at the very beginning, the directors of few palaces, they had very clear the fact that they were challenging problems that were quite different from traditional museums, where we mean traditional museum in the sense of buildings that have been built to just actually to display artworks. So palace museums, we conceive a palace museum like a royal residence. It's like the interaction of these three main topics, so the building, the collection, but of course also the gardens. So of course, as we have been through during all the morning, these places are not only museums today, but are also, and they were palaces of places of power and representation, and they have a very multifaceted side, because of course they are museums today, but they also have a lot of other sides and faces. Here I give you some example of different kind of use of this Palaces Museum. They can of course host different kind of events, exhibition, they have education activities. They can also be places of power today. So here we see the Palace of Versailles when the politics, I mean the head of states met just after COVID, the OTAN that met at the Royal Palace of Madrid. Of course, they can also host private events. Well, all these challenges and these different kind of skills are gathered also in all the employees that work in this kind of palaces. So the importance of also of the trainings and the sharing of the best practices, because Palaces Museum also they have very specific kind of employees and so kind of skills that are today really the heritage and sometimes the immaterial heritage that is kept by our palaces. Of course, in a palace museum, you can also find a fauntenier, a gardener, so very different skills compared to traditional museums. So of course, these activities that are connecting the past with the present, and I would say with the future, They raise a very specific topic in the field of conservation, promotion, and management. And so that's the idea of this network. Actually, the very core of the network is to improve the sharing of the experiences and the best practices, and to strengthen the cooperation between the institution, and I would say also between persons. Of course, we focused a lot during the last years in three big pillars, which are sustainability, with very different programs, with the UNESCO, a program in preventive conservation. Of course, everything has been mentioned before about digital and new technologies, and also the storytelling, so what we say to our public. So just to give you a short idea of who are those people, of course, everything is managed by a General Assembly. Here you have a picture of the last one that has been held in Madrid this year, so you can see it's becoming something quite big. And we have a board, an international board, with the aim also to represent the geographical diversity of our network. So the network is based and chaired by the Palace of Versailles. So you will meet the president tomorrow. And then we have England with Historic Royal Palaces, Italy with La Venaria Reale, the president of Patrimonio Nacional, Klaus Panholzer, that you also meet tomorrow from Schönbrunn, the Palace of Versailles again, and then Hungary with the Palace of Sissi, the Gödöllő Palace. So to come to the very concrete core of my presentation, how we do that, so how we improve the best practices and the exchange between employees, we do that through several different kinds of activities. One of them is the technical meetings. We call technical meetings because they are not scientific symposium, but the idea is to really discuss very practical topics. To give you an idea, here you have some example, but to give you an idea, this year we had the technical meeting about nostalgia from Fontainebleau and SPSG. We had another technical meeting about how to manage visitor flow, especially in case of hyper-tourism. And the very last one 2 weeks ago about conservation of royal theaters. So you will see there are any kind of topic from conservation, but also promotion and management. Here we had a very interesting meeting in Spain about hydraulic system and also how to save and to use differently our resources and water resources. Tapestries, of course, so you will see every can touch every different topic of the management of our royal residences. Of course, we organize also international conferences, so those are the last conferences organized also with ICOM Demist. And that's a very successful program that I would like to present you in deep today. It's a program that has been conceived like the Erasmus project for students, but it's dedicated to professional working in royal residences. Actually, we realized that through technical meeting, we could not really get all the professionals, so the idea was to establish a grant, like a competition, to enable people to travel in different residences to work on a very specific topic. So we do that since 8 years. Of course, as technical meeting, it can be really any kind of topic. And during the year, we really observed that this format, so the mobility grants, really allow first the network to be very visible, so to be strong into their members, but also to create long-term and stable connection between people and so between institutions. So this is a little presentation of the statics of the participation, of the kind of person, because most of the time we notice that all these profiles that are not really strictly linked to the curator part are very interested in this kind of program. And that, of course, this is the occasion also to then establish long-lasting results. We have a steering committee that it's also very European because we have England, Portugal, Spain, Austria, and Poland. And here I give you some example of some experiences from our participants. And the idea is not just to establish link, but as I said before, to really create long-lasting project and cooperation. And so one of them is precisely that one. Just to give you a very concrete example, in Gödöllő, so I mentioned it before, it's known to be the Sissi Palace, and so they have guided tour with Sissi in person. And so the person that is acting Sissi, she asked to make a mobility grant in Miramare, which is also one of the palaces used by Sissi. And since then, it was such a big success when Sissi went to Miramare, then since then the Miramare Palace also has his Sissi guide. And that was another very concrete example. Actually, in Versailles, there was, of course, in the past, the tradition of having ananas, which was le fruit du roi. But this tradition has been lost during the years, and one of the gardeners of Versailles wanted to recreate that tradition, so he traveled to Portugal, to Sintra, where they still have a very big culture of ananas, and so he brings back the ananas in Versailles, and so today pineapple are also in Versailles. So there are simple and funny examples, but to give you an idea of how these very short exchanges can really then change the life of the institution or make a very good impact. So again, the idea is to create a dialogue, to foster the collaboration, and to strengthen the tie between the members. And that's it. I was short. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alouidi. It's very interesting and important to listen to you that you mentioned about establishing a coordinated approach by organizing grants throughout many countries, mostly Western European countries. And also one of the questions you showed us about whether or not you asked the participants that grant help you to establish a link or a relationship with your host country, host institution. The answer was overwhelmingly yes, it is quite important. The only thing I would like to maybe ask is, you said that like an Erasmus scheme, Erasmus program, but the network you are telling us is mostly covering the Western European countries. Southeast Europe is missing. Is there any particular reason for this regional choice, or any restrictions in terms of participating countries? Southeast, I mean, former Yugoslavia, the Balkans, Turkey, perhaps.
So it's not just for the mobility grants, if I understand well, but in general, the member of the network, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, actually, it's something that it started with a very small group of palaces that was France, Spain, Germany, and Austria. And then we grew a lot during the last years, but it's also something that comes from the institution. So we do not have any active politics to go looking in different countries for the moment. We always had a
accepting the requests. Basically.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So there's no strategy of country for the moment. So it's just accepting the request we have.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for all our fascinating speakers, 4 of them here this afternoon in the second session. The talks were quite inspiring and very important, significant. They mentioned about very important points in their presentations, and I would like you to ask the audience whether you have any questions, because although we are running a little bit late, but I think we don't have any further sessions, so we are a little bit flexible. And I would love to have any questions. I asked the first question myself. Any questions or comments you would like to mention? Similar to my classroom, everything is all right. They are silent. They either understand very well or they are getting tired. No. Yes, we have a question. Please, can you please also introduce yourself?
Thank you. My name is Karina Marotta. I come from Spain, from Patrimonio Nacional. I was very interested in all the presentations, very inspiring. But I have a question for Yvonne about this project with the Van Abbe Museum. It's a collaborative project. And what does this mean? I mean, how do you or do they invite people to cooperate in terms of practical ways, no? Practical issues.
So if I understand you right, you asked about the Van Abbe Museum?
Yeah.
And
I mean, you said it's a collaborative project. So I wanted to know more about how do they do it. I mean, do people from the community curate exhibitions, or they lend their own collections, or how does it work?
Exactly. I think what I said, it was first like, I don't know if some of you know the Van Abbe Museum, how it was, because it was really like this white cube with very, conceptual art, and it's such explanations you really couldn't understand. What are they talking about? You need to be kind of at least very high educated to understand, the titles and the explanation, and then you would totally, let's go out here, let's get out here. And then government said, well, if you don't want to deal with your community, if you don't want to ask your community what they need and what they expect from you, we were going to cut your budget first, and then we will close your museum. So we really want you to get down from that, I would say, steps on the ladder and go down and see what community needs. And of course, they asked community, but it was not mandatory to go and to work with them, but they created a kind of a group and just started to work with them and asking them, okay, how can we be more in service of society, actually what a museum should be. And they created working groups with neighborhood, and asking how can we be in service of you. And it was on all levels, actually. It was on exhibitions. It's not that they stopped doing like the expert things, but they also created exhibitions really together with community, with neighbors, and also about activities. They made it very much more together. And not you are our visitors, but you are our users, and we want you to tell us how you want to use this museum. So it was very difficult for them, because they were a very white cube, very intellectual, conceptual, and they still do those kind of exhibitions, of course, but they really changed, looking at themselves, okay, how can we do this? And they really worked together with ones who wanted to work with them in the community. So they opened up actually on all levels. And it was really impressive, because I know the museum really well, and I know the director, and it was really, really difficult for him to go down actually and see who's actually here, for whom am I here, and this is my place, and this is my community, and how can I work with them? So yeah, very impressive. Yep.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Beyza, please. My student.
Now we are really curious.
I forced them.
Oh, ask questions, ask questions.
No, it's her turn.
Thank you all for the insightful presentations, firstly. My question is for Mr. Trentini, especially. I wanted to ask, how do you ensure the preservation of the historic or local value of the Venetian villas when you establish them for new international networks?
In my opinion, it is actually that strategy that allow me to preserve the historical features and memories, because I have seen that history without present progressively made the artifacts not visible, not comprehensible. Gestures, experiences in the museums, contemporary experiences, at the condition that these experiences are rooted in the history, become a way of communicating even stronger than the information, than the, how would I say, the publications that are necessary but are not sufficient for a public, my public, which sometimes has not the structures, the education to understand historical speech. So I have to carry the public by means of contemporary gestures to be able to understand what it's the second step, the step of the preserving memory and information.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments? No? Then, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to, on behalf of the organizing committee and the national palaces, I would like to thank all of our participants for their remarkable speeches and contributions. And also I would like to thank the audience for their patience, and they kept their interest without any sign of tiredness. Thank you. And today is the last session.
Değerli katılımcılarımıza sunumlar için teşekkür ediyoruz. Oturum başkanı ve katılımcılarınıza hediyelerini vermek üzere Milli Saraylar Başkanı Doktor Yasin Yıldız'ı sahneye davet ediyorum. We